So there's really 5 phases to an effective business case. And these are the 5 phases that I follow as I create one. The first thing is an initial analysis. So you need to understand what that problem is and really work through being able to figure out all those different pieces. The second thing is determining the potential solutions to the problem. So not just looking at, okay, well, here's what I want, here's the way I want to go. You got to look at, okay, what are all the, objective look, what are all the possible options that we could utilize? Third thing is actually writing the business case. So that's actually pretty far down. You've done a lot of work. By the time you're writing the business case, a lot of times you're just putting it onto a document and then going back and filling in the gaps. Fourth thing is reviewing the business case, making sure it's good, you don't have any mistakes, and doing all that. And then the fifth thing, the final step, is presenting that business case. The whole goal of the business case and presenting the business case is to get the business to say, yes, we agree, and we want to move forward with that recommendation or that project. So those are the 5 phases that I utilize on creating an effective business case. So now what we're going to do is actually go through each of those phases and further break it down and give you some kind of highlights of things that happen during that particular phase. So first off, phase 1, so the initial analysis. This is where you're really diving in and fully understanding the problem or opportunity. So you need to fully understand it. You need to understand that that's the root problem, and you need to define who it's all affecting, right? And kind of working through and detailing all the pieces to that problem, because you want your recommended solution to be able to solve for all pieces of that, not just one, kind of final or one little piece of the problem. The second thing is, under the initial analysis, you need to determine some high-level requirements. You want to get an idea of what the business requirements are. And this isn't a full, business requirements document or anything like that, but this is just some high-level requirements, get an idea of kind of what their business need is, and you'll be able to determine that throughout kind of understanding that problem most of the time with just a few additional questions. The third thing is, you want to understand what data you're going to need to sell this idea and sell the return on investment. The first thing the business case needs to be able to do is to convince decision makers to take action. That's number 1, regardless of the action. You just want to convince them to take action, convince them that a problem is there and that they need to take action. And the second thing is to convince them to go towards your recommended solution. So you want to identify and get information or understand where you can get information to help determine that. So maybe that's in, maybe the issue is that the customer service team is solving their cases way too slow, right? They're solving their cases within 72 hours. But as part of the business, you have kind of a motto that you go by that you'll have their customer's case solved within 48 hours. And you're not really hitting that mark. And so now you're going in to identify what is causing that, what is the problem. And so now you need to look at it and say, okay, now I need to identify data to help support that. I need to identify that the data that supports that it's taking 72 hours and identify what data could be collected later on to validate that the particular solution is actually meeting the need that is being driven, from the project. The next thing is you want to, after you've got a good understanding of the problem, you got some high-level requirements, and you've understood kind of how you're going to support your project and what data you're going to need to define that return on investment. The next thing is you want to validate with some decision makers that the level of return is worth the potential investment. So before you actually waste time creating a business case, you want to make sure it even makes sense to go past this point. Some people will skip this step and go and create a business case, and then they'll go to present it, and their boss will say, "Oh, we already know about that problem, and there's a solution that's being created over here, or we've already determined that solving that solution is going to cost more than the benefit we're going to get." That's not good. And then you just wasted all this time creating a business case. I had one very real example of that when I was working as a business analyst. The business wanted me to automate this process that they did. And I'm trying to remember exactly what the process was, but it was a process that they were doing, and there were 2 users that had to do it once a week. And the process that they had to follow was a little bit more of a manual process. They got a pop-up alert that they needed to do it, and then they had to click a series of like 3 buttons and select one option set. And it took, on average, when I timed it out, about 9 seconds for these users to do this once a week. And so what I was able to do is say, okay, how much time does that take them in a year? 2 users every week, 9 seconds, round that up and say, okay, maybe it takes 10 seconds because there could be a couple times where they're a little slower for whatever reason, or maybe the system is a little slower. And then you can figure out, okay, it takes them a total of an hour, let's just say. I'm not doing the math, but it takes them an hour every year to work through this manual process. And when we looked at potential solutions, the solution that was most evident, there were really 2 solutions. One was do nothing, and the other solution was to automate the process. Automating the process was going to take us around 52 hours to develop. Well, we wouldn't see a return on investment. We wouldn't even break even for 52 years. So at that point, there's no point in moving forward. I didn't have to write a business case or do anything for it, because it's like, well, there's no reason for us to move forward. So that's really what you're doing. You're just validating with some decision makers that it doesn't even make sense to move. The next thing is you kind of do an internal thing like I did at that point, and I did some analysis to determine, does it even make sense to move forward? Is this ever going to get approved? And in this particular case, it wasn't. So I just canceled it. So you just want to do what I call a sanity check and just validate that it even makes sense to move forward from there. So once you're complete with phase 1, you move into phase 2, which is where you're actually determining potential solutions. So the potential solutions, you want to determine all of the potential solutions. You don't want to leave out any solutions. You want to look and objectively look and say, here are the possible ways we could solve for this. And kind of one key at the bottom that I have there is, and I had it in my example, is one potential solution should be that you do nothing, right? It could be that one action is to take no action. And because there is a cost to taking no action. So you want to have that as a potential solution for the project, because that is a very real thing. The only way that wouldn't be the case is if maybe a government agency is driving it and saying, which actually, no, it still would be. So what I was thinking is a government agency is driving it saying, for regulations, you must meet this particular requirement. But I guess you still could have a solution to say that there's no action taking, and that maybe the fines you would receive are less than what it actually take to resolve the problem. But besides the point, you want to identify all the possible solutions to the problem, and you don't want to just high level them. You want to understand what the benefits are of that particular solution, what the costs are of that particular solution, the timetable of the project. You don't need a schedule, but you just want to understand, are we talking a couple hours, a couple days, weeks, months, years to create that, and kind of understanding that if you're talking bleeding edge technology, that timetable is going to be pretty long, right? Because you have to do research and development to determine that. So giving an idea of timetable. Then the next thing is time before a return on investment is realized. So for that example, it would have taken us about 53 years to break even before we even made back our investment on that. And we all know a system's not going to last 53 years. So we'd probably be moved out of that system in a number of years, and we never would have made our return on that particular issue. And then the risks. And the risks you want to identify are the risks of that particular project. So maybe your system's not very well defined, and you could break a whole bunch of other stuff, right? So the timetable is really short, and the costs are really low for it, but the risks are really high that when we make this change, we don't know exactly what the back end is doing anymore, and so it could break a bunch of stuff. So you want to make sure that that's defined. So this benefits, costs, timetable, time for return on investment, and risks should be done for every single solution that you've come up with, including your recommended solution. Then you move into phase 3, where you actually start writing the business case. Most companies have a template that you use for their company. Some are a little bit more formal, some are a little less formal, but they all have the same general concept. So the key, or the 6 the 6 sections to a business case that I'm going to talk about are listed right here. So the first thing is the executive summary. This is actually the thing that I write last. What the executive summary is doing is saying, okay, for executives that don't have time to read this whole document, which could be many, many pages, here's a summary of everything, right? Here's a summary, very high level about the problem. Here's a summary about the kind of quick analysis that was done. Here's a summary of the potential solutions and the recommended solution, right? And that's just summarized in a couple paragraphs. The whole point of that is executives are not going to have time to read the whole document. They need a bird's eye view to understand the high levels of it, to usually prepare themselves for coming in to the presentation of that business case and deciding if they want to move forward. So the executive summary is the thing at the top of the document, but that's usually the last thing that's done. Next thing is the problem statement. So this is the well-defined problem statement as to the opportunity or issue that we're having, that we're solving for. And this should be very succinct and very, very clear, no ambiguity. Next is the analysis that you did. You have some documentation there as to what you did and what you were looking at and how it went and what you found. Then you go into your solution options, and so this should be listing out those potential options. I have the cost-benefit analysis afterwards. Sometimes that's rolled in and they want that, like I had mentioned in phase 2, on each solution. Sometimes they want each solution and then they want some type of matrix or matrice that has, okay, solution, and here's the cost, the benefits, and here's when we would get our return on investment. There's some different forms that people use and different companies use. So they all have that, but it's just a matter of if its own section or if it's rolled up into the solution options section. And then last but not least is the recommendation. This is, what are you recommending? Here's everything, the problem, potential solutions. I've done all the research, and here's what I recommend we move forward with. So that's how you write the business case. So the next thing you're going to do is review the business case. This is just like a resume. You want to make sure that this is good and solid. Otherwise, your hard work on this may go to waste. So you want to go back through your business case and you want to validate that that problem statement justifies a call to action. Ultimately, that's number one, right? You want those decision makers to say, yes, we need to take action. So you want to make sure that you're portraying that problem very strongly and backing it up with facts and with numbers. Second thing is, you want to ensure that all the valid solutions are given. You don't want to leave a solution out or a potential solution out because it maybe competes with your recommended solution. You want to make sure that's listed. You want to let that business make the decision with all the facts. The third thing is double check your cost benefit analysis calculations. It's really easy to get those mixed up and that can really throw everything off. And if somebody points out a mistake in your presentation, your credibility is shot. So you want to make sure that that's accurate. Fourth is you want to objectively dissect your recommendation. So after you get all done with all your solutions, take a step back and really objectively look at it. Don't just go with that option because that option sounds like the coolest option and just a project you really love to run because that's an area that you want to get into because you want it to be right for the business. So make sure you're objectively dissecting your recommendation. Obviously, correct any grammatical or spelling mistakes. And then you want to have another person review it. So just another set of eyes on it. You've been looking at it for how many days, maybe a week or 2, 3 weeks. So you want to have somebody else review it. And then last but not least is you want to get buy-in of two key stakeholders. So this doesn't have to be the decision makers. You want this to be stakeholders. Like usually if you're offering up a project, you've got a business manager or somebody that really wants that project to go on. That's one of the problem people or one of the people that are dealing with the problem on a day-to-day basis, or it could be users that are dealing with it. You want to get a couple people that back you up and that have reviewed the business case and they agree with it, because that's going to give you a lot of credibility when you go into actually presenting the business case to the executives or the decision makers. After you've reviewed it, we have the fifth and final stage, and that's actually presenting the business case. So the first thing you want to do is you want to remind yourself that they haven't seen this before. So you might have sent the business case to them prior to the meeting as part of the invite, which is a good habit to get into. At least they can review it if they have a little time. But you want to go in as if they've never seen this. They have no idea what the problem is. They have no idea what the possible solutions are because you've been working on it forever. It's really easy for you to skip the high level and just dive right into the details and lose people. And if they're lost, there's no way that you're going to get their agreement for funding of moving a project forward. With that same concept, you want to make sure that in that meeting you're hammering home and defining that problem and the need for that business to act. Just like you want your business case to state that, that's the first thing. If decision makers don't see that there's a problem, they're not going to really listen to your solutions and recommendations because they're going to say, you know what, it's not that big of a problem. Who cares? We're just not going to take action, right? So you want to make sure that you're hammering that home and that you're kind of selling them that there's a problem. The next thing is give your recommendation. You don't need to go through everything. You want to, talk about that, talk about the problem, and then give your recommendation. And then you can talk about the return on investment for that particular recommendation. I like to then circle back and say, here are the other options that were being looked at. Here's the other solutions that we came up with. And here are the reasons I ruled each of them out. Or here are the reasons that I went with my recommended solution over that particular solution. So it just helps people to kind of rule out the other ones. And sometimes it's really obvious, but it just helps to kind of break that down. The next thing is you want to touch on each risk. So if there's a risk, touch on it. You don't want to deep dive and spend too much time into the risks that are there. You just want to make sure that they're aware that there's a risk. And if they have questions, I guarantee you they will stop and they will ask you to go deeper into that risk. So just make sure you're touching on it. Not that you're skating past it, but you're addressing it, touching on it, and then moving on, only coming back if they ask you for more details. You also, to build your credibility, you want to mention your stakeholder backers. So those two people that you had review it ahead of time that agreed with you that this is a problem and needs to be solved and that the solution that you've come up with is a good one, bring them up. Hey, the business manager, Bob, is somebody that I've reviewed this business case with, and he was heavily involved in helping me come up with the solutions. He really agrees with this, that this is a problem and that this solution will solve it for them. It's going to make the business a lot easier for them. And you can kind of mention it. So it's building on your credibility, especially if you're having like subject matter experts or people that are kind of proponents within that business that help drive change, positive change. Then mentioning them will be very helpful because it's going to help those decision makers say, you know what, if Bob thinks it's the right thing to do, it's his department, and he's backed some of the other business cases that went really well, and we're kind of got good return on investment. And then the last thing you want to do is you want to close the presentation summarizing the benefits and the return on investment for the recommendation and the action that you've kind of come up with. So you want to end with saying, this is really important. This is going to help solve that problem that we've defined. And here's the benefits. Here's when we get our return. We get our return on investment within 2 months. And then everything after that is profit. We think within the first year, it's going to equate to X amount of dollars in saved saved cost. And then 5 years, here's kind of where it would be. And so you want to make sure that you're ending with those benefits and that return on investment. So really that's the overall thing about, the basics of a business case. And then the 5 phases that I've kind of come up with that you work through as you're writing and presenting a business case. I hope that makes sense. I hope that will help you as you move forward. If you ever get pulled in to help or to write a business case, that you'll have an idea of kind of what you're having to do in the process you have to follow to make that happen. So thank you very much. I'll see you in future lectures.